They can stand by.
Dekan is on the way.
All right. Okay.
A good day, Professor Bruno. Hello, Dr. T. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm fine. Thank you. Good to see you.
Good. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Razif and I'll be emceeing on today's webinar.
Great. Thank you, Rajiv.
So we will be starting on any time at the moment. We are waiting for the cue from our technical team.
Sure. I see already. Come on, let me put on a jacket.
All right, just for any information, we already live on on our YouTube, and we will give some time for our participant to join in.
Hai, keluar? Tak keluar. Dengar tak saya cakap? Tak dengar?
Dengar, Prof.
Dengar? Okey.
A very good evening to everyone and Assalamualaikum. Well, depending on where you are now geographically, it's now 10 minutes past 3 here in Malaysia, so let's not keep you waiting any longer. And with that, I would like to welcome all our panelists as well as our participants for today's webinar entitled Probiotic, Gut System, Stress and Immunity. My name is Rajiv Sazali from UC Technology Mara, and I will be emceeing today's webinar. Also to note for the Q&A session involving our invited speaker later on, it is sufficient to put your inquiries in the YouTube comment section below. So we will have a few invigilators that will select the question to be brought up to our speakers later on. First of all, before we start, I would like to show an enormous gratitude to our fellow organizer that has made this webinar possible. A million thanks to Yakult Malaysia and UC Technology Mara. In today's webinar, we're going to explore the relationship between gut microbiota and health in the role of diet as well as insight of the latest research activity on the Lactobacillus casei strain Shirota in Europe. So it's going to be engaging, intriguing, interesting day indeed. To kickstart on today's webinar, I would like to call upon the Dean of the Faculty of Sports Science and Recreation, UC Technology Mara, Professor Dr. Mohad Anizu Muhammad Noor, to deliver the welcoming speech. All right, Professor, the virtual floor is yours.
Everyone, thank you very much, Mr. MC today, Mr. Raziv. First and foremost, I would like to welcome all our distinguished guests, speakers. So on behalf of the faculty, I would like to thank Yakult Malaysia and Berhad for organizing this wonderful webinars. Also, not forget to my colleague, Associate Professor Dr. Mandran, and also to Associate Professor Dr. Sni, Deputy Dean of Industry Linkages, Research and Industry Linkages, and especially to our speakers, Dr. T. Isiong, President Nutrition Society of Malaysia, as well as Professor Dr. Bruno, Science Director, Yakult Europe. And thank you very much for your kind support for our webinar today. I think this is our second webinar with Yakult, and we hope we will continue this great event to be able to explain, to share experience, knowledge with our colleagues as well as to the public who would like to know about more about probiotics, especially in terms of related to sport and exercise. So on behalf of the faculty, once again, thank you very much to all parties who are involved in this great webinar, and especially to our Yakult Malaysia Berhad and also our colleagues at Faculty of Sports Science and Recreation. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. We certainly hope that this will be an insightful session indeed. Moving on, I would like to introduce you to our moderator of the day, a decorated member of the Faculty of Sports Science and Recreation, UITM, as well as a practicing nutritionist, Associate Dr. Professor Dr. Mahendran Apukuti. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass this to Associate Professor Dr. Mahendran for the introduction of our speaker. Doctor, the ball is on your court.
Thank you, Raziv. Thank you, everyone. For you all, everybody's information. Yeah? Razif is our young lecturer who are the MC for the day. He's coming from the Negeri Sembilan campus. We have many campuses in Malaysia. We have 5 campuses. One of the campus that we are projecting here is now from the main campus, where the dean and all the top management here in Shah Alam, and we have from Seremban, we have from Arau, Perlis, northern side, and also from Jengka, Pahang, and we also have one more campus in Kota Samarahan, Sarawak. So we have 5 campuses of graduates of Faculty of Sports Science here. And today is a very important day for working together with Yakult Malaysia to bring a series of webinar on the webinar on probiotic and health. Very important topic. And we have 2 eminent speakers, very important speakers. One from Malaysia, Dr. T. Isiong, the President of Nutrition Society of Malaysia, and also Professor Dr. Bruno from Europe, Yakult Europe. He's a scientific director there. We have met Professor Bruno in 2018, working together with Nutrition Society of Malaysia. As we were discussing yesterday, he came very fast and touch and go because of commitment. He's a man of commitment there, and very good presentation. I believe all of you, when the audience going to listen, very interesting topic from Malaysian setting, where Dr. T. Isiong going to give us the gut microbiota and health and the role of diet. Who else can talk about diet? With food and diet, a part of the president of the Nutrition Society of Malaysia. Let us welcome Dr. T. Isiong, but I have to read his little bit of biodata. Mind you, he's been there for many years, yeah? Many years. I mean, his CV can write a thesis actually. I was his mentor before, and I'm proud to be been mentoring from him. He is a very good leader and teaches many things to whole Malaysian people who are nutritionists in this country, even the dietitians and the health professionals will know him. He's the president of the Nutrition Society of Malaysia. He's the chair of the Southeast Asia Public Health Nutrition CPHN network. And as a president, he leads several community nutrition programs, including the chairing the National Steering Committee for Nutrition Month Malaysia. He represents in several technical working groups in Ministry of Health, including National Coordinating Committee for Food and Nutrition, one of the highest level of meeting in Ministry of Health for food and nutrition, and also technical working group for nutritional guidelines for many years. So if there's people in nutrition field, they will know buku hijau or green book where food composition, many things he have done it through the Institute of Medical Research, where he was there for many years there. And related to food regulation and Codex Alimentarius also, he worked with that department, division as well. Dr. T also a scientific director for the International Life Science Institute, ILSI, Southeast Asia region, and he also coordinator for the Malaysian Country Committee for ILSI, ILSI Southeast Asia region. Dear audience, let's put together, listen to his presentation entitled The Gut Microbiota and Health, the Role of Diet. Dr. T, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Mandran. Audio is okay?
Yes, Dr. T.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction. And yes, we have been together many years together, yeah? And together we should bring more activities to Nutrition Society of Malaysia. And Dr. Mandran is the Vice President of Nutrition Society of Malaysia. So the future is all in your hands, huh? Dr. Mandran. Thank you, Professor Aniso, Decan of who's Faculty of Sports Science and Recreation, a very unique faculty. I must visit your place one day and see. Thank you for inviting me to put my thoughts, share some thoughts on this topic of probiotics and health, a topic which is very close to my heart And I really believe in functional foods, and probiotics is one of these functional foods. So we think beyond vitamins, mineral, protein, carbohydrate. We have to think beyond classical nutrients now. Think of other food components, and probiotics is one of these, which we have now a lot of scientific evidence. And my role today, my task today is to talk about gut health, importance of gut health, how it relates to total health of a person, and what's the role of diet. How diet plays a very important role in maintaining good gut health, thereby maintaining immunity health and overall health of a person. And the role of dietary factors, there are many factors. I will touch on most of these, but I also touch on probiotics as one of the dietary factors. Yeah. So let's get it started. Share my screen, and I think this one, is it working?
Yes, see.
Okay, it's working. Yeah, thank you. And so, as Dr. Mandran said, I will be talking about gut microbiota. We'll talk about what it is, yeah, and how it relates to total health, immunity health of a person, and how does diet play a role in this. As president of NSM, I think healthy nutrition, diet and nutrition plays a very important role in many aspects of health, prevention of diseases, promoting good health, and importantly, gut health, where we'll focus on today. So what my talk will cover is, firstly, very generally, what is gut health? I would emphasize that gut health is very much neglected by many people. We should focus much more on gut health. And next, I will talk about what is this gut health? What determines this gut health, and talk about the gut microbiota, how we should take care of these trillions of microorganisms that will bring about positive balance of good microbiota balance, and therefore bring about good gut health. Next, I will talk about the factors that will promote this healthy gut microbiota, good balance of gut microbiota. What are the important dietary factors that will bring about good balance of gut microbiota, and therefore good gut health? And then, as I mentioned, I will focus on many dietary factors, but one of these I will also include is probiotics, consuming foods containing good bacteria, beneficial bacteria. So not all bacteria are bad, so there are good bacteria, and how probiotics, known as a beneficial bacteria, can bring about good gut health, and therefore good immune health, and therefore overall health of a person. I will also talk about how we choose genuine probiotic containing products. That is my also other interest in food regulations in this country. Yeah? So there's a food law. I'll explain about this food law as one of this talk this afternoon. And then finally, I'll share with you some information that we have from Nutrition Society, how we have been working together with Yakult, with other company to bring about probiotics education program, share with you some information, some educational material from that program. Let's go on to the first topic then, gut health. Gut health, we feel, is a neglected health issue. Many people talk about health, they talk about the NCDs, non-communicable diseases, talk about heart disease, diabetes, consumption, and also hypertension and so on. Of course, it's correct. We should focus on these NCDs because they have been with us for 30, 40 years, and we don't seem to see an end to the NCDs. So we see that every other adult Malaysian is either overweight or obese, very bad scenario. About 20% of adult Malaysians are diabetic. World Diabetes Day was just a few days ago. A lot of interest on that, emphasis on that. 1/3 of Malaysians have a hypertensive, high blood pressure, and also 4 in 10 of Malaysians have high blood cholesterol. And most scarily, many of these adults do not know that they have hypertension, that they have high blood cholesterol. They don't care if they are overweight or obese. Yes, that is indeed so. We must give attention to NCDs, but I think we've also neglected the gut health. It's also very important. When people talk about that, to the people, gut means the gastrointestinal tract, the mouth, the stomach, the whole intestine, small intestine, large intestine, and so on. What is important to the people is that we eat food, we must digest the food, we must digest the nasi lemak we had yesterday, today, tomorrow. We must digest the char kway teow we had. So digest it, release the nutrients, absorb the nutrients, tend to all parts of the body. That's how gut is to many people. But they forget that gut is more important than that. Gut actually plays a very important part in our immune health. So only worry about gut health when we have food poisoning, for example, loose stool, diarrhea, for example. Other than that, we don't care about the gut. So I'm here to emphasize that we must pay more attention to gut health, and many dietary factors have a very important role in bringing about positive gut health. Yeah? So gut is more than just digestion, release of nutrients, absorption of nutrients. It plays a very important role in our immune health of the system. And many people are not aware of that very important, the very importance of this gut health and the GI tract. So my talk will talk about gut health good gut health can be achieved through the gut microbiota. We will talk about what is this gut microbiota, and dietary practices are the key to bring about good gut health. Yeah? And with good gut health, we can then bring about good immune system. And immune system is such an important topic now because of the coronavirus infection, because of COVID-19, the virus infects our body. If we have a good immune system, we will be able to fight the infection. We'll be able to fight the virus. We'll have less severe problem with the coronavirus. Therefore, we must do all we can to promote our immune system, have a strong immune system, and dietary factors are extremely important. We can do what we can to prevent the virus from entering the body, but if unfortunately the virus enter our body, then the difference between one person with good immune system and a person poor immune system is the dietary practices will bring about good gut health, and probiotics can help to bring about good immune system that will protect a person from all kinds of infection, including coronavirus infection. So now we talk about the gut health, gut microbiota, what it is. Actually, the gut microbiota consists of a huge population of microorganisms, trillions of them living in our GI tract, mostly in the large intestine. And among these trillions of microorganisms, there's over 1,000 bacteria species inside there. And within that microbiota, there are actually more these microorganisms than our body cells, actually, interestingly. Yeah. So out of these microorganisms, there are good bacteria and bad bacteria. So as I mentioned, there are also bacteria that are good, and we want more of those good bacteria in our gut. We want a positive balance of good bacteria. That's what it means by positive balance of gut microbiota. So how much is a good balance? Well, approximately, maybe we can say if 85% of it is good bacteria and about 15-20% is bad bacteria, then maybe we can say there's a good gut microbiota balance, and therefore our body is able to fight off bad microorganisms that enter our body. So very importantly, we remember that good bacteria must win over the bad bacteria. Like any story, the good guy must kill all the bad guys. Yeah, that is how the microbiota story is about. So when the balance is right, when there's more good bacteria than the bad bacteria, then what happens? We have proper bowel movement, regular bowel movement. We don't suffer from constipation. Yeah. And we are able to break down our food properly. We can even break down some part of the dietary fiber. Yes, mostly cannot be broken down, but some bacteria can break down small part of the dietary fiber. Good bacteria can help to form some vitamins like vitamin B12, vitamin K. So bacteria also performs good function in our gut. Yeah? And also if the balance is right, then our system is able to block off bad microorganisms, toxins in our body, yeah, can block these, break down these toxic substances. And more importantly, our gut microbiota can promote a good immune system, healthy immune system. And I would like to repeat that about 80% of our whole body immune system lies within the gut, within the microbiota system. That's how important gut microbiota is. Yeah. So what happens if the balance is out? More bad bacteria compared with the good bacteria. Then that's not a very good story for these people. Yeah, bad bacteria wins over the good bacteria. Then what happens is some of these symptoms may appear: diarrhea, jerit-berit, constipation, cannot go to the toilet for a few days or weeks. Changes in bowel habit, irregular, excessive bloating, burping, yeah, kembung, yeah, stomach, and discomfort in the abdominal, excessive fatigue, tired, lack of concentration. Of course, some of these has many causes, yeah, but imbalance of gut microbiota can also bring about some of these symptoms that we can look out for, and probiotics, good bacteria, can help in some of these symptoms. Yeah. So my main story now is that healthy eating and active living, very appropriate for the Faculty of Sports Science, yeah, and Recreation. Healthy eating and active living. Nutrition Society is not just talking about nutrition, healthy eating. We also believe in active living. And Dr. Mahendra will scold us if we don't be always focus on active physical activity as well, together with healthy eating. Both are equally important for good maintenance of well-being of a person. So remember, healthy eating plus active living. Yeah. Let me then share some parts of these dietary factors and how we should maintain this healthy eating and active living, and how to do that. Yeah. So before I go on to the positive factors, I would like to share with you some of the negative factors can disrupt. What factors can kacau the gut microbiota? For example, overuse, prolonged use, misuse of antibiotics. Sedikit saja we take antibiotic. Anything we don't know, we just take antibiotic. That antibiotic will kill up all kinds of bacteria, good and bad bacteria in our body. So habis all the bacteria in our body. So don't use antibiotic incorrectly. Just ask a specialist for that. Unhealthy diet, especially fatty diets. The char kway teow that we had, a lot of fat, yeah, and the nasi lemak could have a lot of fat. So I'm not saying you can't eat it, but don't eat it every other day, yeah. And then excessive alcohol consumption, smoking, excessive stress. All these are the factors that can kacau the gut microbiota, bring about killing off the good bacteria and bring about imbalance of the bad bacteria. Let's talk about factors that promote gut microbiota. For example, breastfeeding. Breastfeeding, the breast milk has a lot of immune bodies inside. They can pass on to the babies. So breastfeeding is absolutely the most important, the only food they can give to an infant, yeah, when the baby is born. Physical activity. There we say we must focus on physical activity. There are so many goodness about physical activity. It's not just about losing weight. Everybody must be physically active. Even 74-year-old man like me have to be physically active, yeah? Not just 14-year-old man or 24-year-old man, yeah? Balanced and varied diet. I will speak more about balance and varied diet. All these can promote good gut microbiota, good gut health, and overall health of a person, yeah? So I would like to emphasize again that healthy diet is one of the key factors that can improve the ecology of the human gut health, gut microbiota, and therefore good bacteria can grow and multiply and win over the bad bacteria. I will share with you 6 dietary tips. Yeah. Okay, I will go on quite fast. So first tip is practice balance, moderation, and variety. BMV. You know BMW, but please remember BMV. Yeah? Balance, moderation, and variety in your diet. Balance means eat foods from all the food groups. I will talk about the 5 food groups a bit later on. Yeah, eat food from all the 5 food groups. Don't just eat protein foods. Don't just eat carbohydrate foods or vegetables and fruits. Eat all the food groups, then you have balance. Then most likely you get all the nutrients that you need. Moderation, to eat nasi lemak every other day, to eat char kway teow big plate, 20 ringgit nasi lemak. No need for that. Yeah. If you love nasi lemak, you don't have to eat like that. So moderation. To eat ikan bawal every time. Don't eat kacang candy all the time. Variety is very important. Moderation, very important. So variety, also the other factor we must remember. So BMV, extremely important, the basic principles, yeah, of the balanced diet. So these are the 5 food groups: vegetables and fruits, rice, cereals, and other carbohydrate foods, poultry, meat, and also legumes, plant sources of proteins, very important, and milk and milk products. These are the 5 food groups that we should all aim to have every time we have a meal. That's what is balance. Yeah? Eat appropriate amounts, eat different kinds of protein food, different kinds of fruit, different kinds of veggie. Very, actually quite simple to remember and practice that. So now, how to achieve this balance, moderation, and variety? Use the food guide pyramid as a tool. The food guide pyramid, you'll notice that this is a new food pyramid launched by the Ministry of Health recently. What's so new? The vegetables and fruits at the bottom of the pyramid now. Yeah. So use this guide. So the shape of the pyramid means that take more from the bottom of the pyramid, less as you go up, at least from this top here, which are the salt, fats and oils, and sugars. Yeah. And the other tool that we can use is the My Plate, Malaysia Healthy Plate. And the plate uses the principle of suku, suku, separuh. Suku of the protein foods, protein from meat, protein from plant. Suku is from the rice, carbohydrate, tubers, and so on. Separuh is from the fruits and veggie. So eat more fruits and vegetables. That is why the pyramid, the bottom of the pyramid is fruits and vegetables. Use the food guide pyramid, use the My Plate, then most likely you can achieve balance, moderation, and variety. Not so difficult, but it may be sometimes difficult to remember. Just remember that basic principle. Sometimes when we join a hotel buffet, we forget all these things. We just amba all the makan on our plate and just forget about this BMV. Yeah. So very simple, but remember that. Tip number 2 is eat more fiber in your diet. Fiber is not digestible carbohydrate in plant foods, in fruits and vegetables, in legumes. Yeah. What's the importance of fiber? Fiber is good, it gives you a regular bowel movement, no constipation. Yeah. Reduce constipation. Fiber foods will make you stay full so that you don't eat a lot of snacks in between, so that you don't eat too much fatty foods. Yeah. And also fiber can help a person reduce blood cholesterol in the body, can help to reduce blood sugar in the body. So importance of fiber, and how much fiber should we take? 20-30 grams of fiber every day. How should we achieve that? We'll share with you a food pyramid guide how to do that. Yeah. So what are the foods rich in dietary fiber? Very simple. Number 1, fruits and vegetables. Yeah. And why? They're very high in fiber and very high in phytonutrients. I will be speaking a lot about phytonutrients. As I started off just now, I talked about functional foods. Beyond vitamins and minerals, phytonutrients are not vitamins, are not minerals, are not protein, are not carbohydrate. These are the food components present in many plant products. There are many of them are antioxidants. They can help to prevent fight diseases like cancer, heart disease, and so on. And these are the phytonutrients that are present in many fruits and vegetables. And we encourage people to take colorful fruits and vegetables. Why? Because these phytonutrients are very colorful, different colors in the red fruits, in the green vegetables, in the purple fruits, vegetables, even white vegetables have different kinds of phytonutrients, yellow and orange. All these different colors are because different phytonutrients are present. Therefore, eat a rainbow in your plate. Eat different kinds of fruits and vegetables. You get fiber, you get phytonutrients, you get vitamin and minerals. Absolutely, we must put more attention on dietary fiber in our diet. I believe much of the problem people are facing today is lack of fiber in the diet. Number two, rich in fiber is whole grains. Whole grains are rich in fiber, also high in phytonutrients. Again, what is whole grain? Whole grain is a grain which is not processed. All the three layers, all the three components are present. The outer layer called the bran, then the germ, and then the endosperm, the inside, the most part of it. During milling, when in the kilang, they buang all the bran, the outside, and they buang all the germ, whereas the bran and the germ contains a lot of phytonutrients, a lot of good fatty acids, a lot of vitamins and minerals, and a lot of phytonutrients inside. After milling, the white rice, for example, contains mostly protein. A lot of phytonutrients, vitamins and minerals have been removed by this process of milling in the factories. Yeah, so we should take more whole grains. Yeah, and I will share with you some examples of whole grains. What is the goodness of whole grains? It will improve good gut health, promote growth of more good bacteria. It will reduce the risk of chronic diseases such as cancers, heart disease, diabetes. It will help you maintain maintain a normal diet, a normal body weight better, help you able to achieve a normal body weight better. Yeah, because good fiber can make you, dietary fiber can make you feel full longer. You do not eat unnecessary snacks in between. Yeah. So number one is vegetables and fruits. Number three is whole grains. And these are examples of whole grains. Yeah. Whole grains are, for example, brown rice, oats, corn, whole wheat, and so on. What are examples of whole grain foods? For example, wholemeal bread, wholemeal cracker. These are foods made of whole grains. When they mill, they use this to make even pasta, even rice, noodles can be made from wholemeal. Just look for the label that says wholemeal. Yeah. So these are very important examples of whole grains. Try to read the label and look for these whole grains and whole grain foods in your daily diet. Yeah. And number three, high fiber foods are legumes, beans, nuts, and seeds. These are very important sources of protein, plant sources of protein, and they're also very high sources of fiber. So even the Malaysian pyramid talk about using more also of the plant-based protein. Yeah. So we should include more of our diet of plant-based proteins so that our calorie comes more from plant-based sources, our proteins come more from the plant-based sources. Yeah, I'm not saying everyone must be vegetarian, but more of the calorie, protein, and carbs can come from plant-based proteins. Yeah, so these are the goodness of legumes, beans, and nuts, high in fiber, protein, and also contains phytonutrients. So one of my favorite keywords is functional foods and phytonutrients. Yeah. So examples of this goodness of legumes, beans, and nuts. Yeah, these are very high in minerals, fibers, and also there are many examples that the Indian community in this country eat a lot, and we also should emulate their practices and eat more, have more legumes in our products. Yeah, and also good fatty acids in many of the nuts and seeds. Yeah? Okay, move on quickly then. Just share with you some data from research studies that our Nutrition Society did, and also from National Health Survey data. This National Health Mobility Survey showed that 95% of the Malaysian adults do not eat the recommended amounts of dietary fiber, of fruits and vegetables. They're very sad. Right? And also our own NSM study showed that amongst the school children, almost all the school children did not meet the dietary guidelines for the whole grain intake. So this is not a very good picture regarding intake of fruits and vegetables and regarding intake of whole grains. We are not eating enough sources of phytonutrients and dietary fiber in our diet. And these are the scientific evidence to show proof of that. Just a quick word about the food gut pyramid, a bit more to show you that the Malaysian food gut pyramid emphasizes on more fruit and vegetable. That's why at the base of the pyramid, half of the grain must come from whole grains. Grains are important. They give us energy, and our main source of energy must come from grains. But half of that, or even if possible, all of that come from whole grains. That will be healthier food, healthier diet. Yeah, and also consume legumes in the Malaysian food guide pyramid. So use the Malaysian food guide pyramid and the My Healthy Plate to guide us in making food choices every day. Yeah. Okay, tip number 3 is consume prebiotics. Prebiotics are special kinds of dietary fiber, and these can serve as food for the good bacteria in our gut. And some of these examples are, for example, onion, asparagus, and so on. But we may not get enough of this from natural foods. You can look out for some of these in the labels of foods. Some companies add this to the processed foods. For example, inulin, fructooligosaccharides, galacto-oligosaccharides. Yeah? You can read the label, and you can find some of this inulin and other products in some of these processed food and vegetables. And you can get some of these prebiotics. This is tip number 3. Tip number 4 is reduce intake of fatty foods, fried foods. These fatty foods make it very difficult to digest in our body. Then they disturb our digestive system. Then our food take a long time to digest, and this is very bad for our gut microbiota system. Yeah. So the gastric empty takes a long time, and the food remains in our gut, in our stomach for a long time. So remember, the fatty foods are at the tip of the pyramid. Reduce intake of fried foods, fatty meats, and so on. That's tip number 4. Tip number 5 is very simple, but how many of us actually practice this? Drink enough water, 6 to 8 glasses of water. Try to choose plain water, and that's very important for all body functions in the body, including the gut microbiota. Emptying and create a good environment for the gut microbiota to grow, good bacteria to grow. Yeah. And number 6 is consume foods containing probiotics. I will spend some time on this. Yeah. What are these foods containing good bacteria or probiotic foods? So firstly, probiotics, I will not spend too much time on this because Professor Bruno is expert on probiotics, and he will give you much more information on this. Probiotics are the live microorganisms, live bacteria that, if consumed in sufficient quantities, can provide health, a person good health, good gut health, and therefore good overall health. What are important keywords to remember is live microorganisms, important to remember adequate amounts, and therefore can bring about health benefits. Yeah, but good bacteria or probiotics can change the gut microbiota composition, can increase more of the good bacteria and kill off the bad bacteria. And 2 of these probiotics very commonly used in many foods in this country is Lactobacillus species and Bifidobacterium species. Yeah, if you read the label of culture-made drinks, you can find these species mentioned in this. Yeah, so the good bacteria or gut-friendly bacteria can promote good gut health, as I mentioned, and help strengthen the immune system. With good microbiota, it indirectly strengthens the immune system because 80% of the immune system lies within the gut health, with the gut microbiota. Yeah, it can reduce constipation, it can reduce frequency of diarrhea, and Professor Bruno will give more evidence on this. Yeah, and they have been found to be safe and can reduce frequency of diarrhea and constipation. Yeah, and help modulate or improve immune system and form as a barrier so that the toxins or bad microorganisms do not enter the body. Yeah, and also several scientific evidence have shown that they are good for allergies for certain individuals sensitive to allergies. Yeah, so these are the good positive benefits of taking probiotics. Some quick evidences. There are also where to find these food sources of probiotics. There are 2 main sources of foods with bacteria, good bacteria. Number 1 is classical foods. classically traditionally fermented foods. These contain good bacteria. For example, sauerkraut. This is a German food made from fermented cabbage, and tairu for homemade fermented yogurt, and also kimchi. Those who love Korean food will be familiar with this, also fermented, and they add spices inside. And of course, our local tapai pulut. Yeah, all these contain good bacteria, but they may not be called probiotics because they may not have enough number, and they may not be alive when you consume them. Yeah. So how else can we find good bacteria in our diet? These are commercially produced foods that contain probiotics. For example, cultured milk drinks that contain added probiotics, or yogurt that contain added probiotics. Yeah, but you must look for genuine products containing genuine probiotics, or genuine probiotic containing foods. I'll share with you some thoughts on this, how to look for genuine probiotic containing foods. Yeah. So Malaysian food law has a law in 2017, I believe, yeah, enacted a law that governs the sale of foods containing probiotics. If there's no such law, then people can all use the word probiotic and there's no control, and unscrupulous manufacturer will simply call it probiotics without proper criteria, meeting the criteria required for probiotics. Yeah? And so Ministry of Health in this law have scrutinized the various bacteria submitted to them for approval, and now there's a list of permitted bacteria that can be used. Only these bacteria can be used for use in foods like cultured milk drink or yogurt. Yeah. So if those not inside this list cannot be used, and the company you have to apply, Ministry of Health will then check whether they are safe, whether they're effective, whether they're live, whether they bring about health benefits to the human body. Yeah. So these are the permitted cultures, permitted strains approved by Ministry of Health. Yeah. So the regulation has stipulated several criteria for the labeling requirements so that the consumer can look for this criteria and choose what are the genuine products containing probiotics. I'll share with you some of these criteria, and we can just look for the 4 main criteria on the bottle of, let's say, for example, cultured milk drink containing probiotics. Number 1, look for the word live. It must be labeled as live cultures or HIDO, yeah, on the label. The name of the species must be exactly, the name of the strain, must be clearly listed on the label. Every one of us a name, yeah? We'll be upset if people call it by the wrong name. So the strain must be correctly named here. The genus, the species, the strain must be clearly labeled. There must be instruction on the label how to store. Must be stored properly because these are live microorganisms. If you keep them on the table for some time, all the microorganisms are killed already. Yeah, and these live cultures will remain in our gastrointestinal system, proven to be still live when it reaches our GI tract for it to function properly. Yeah, and the amount, the number of these microorganisms must be clearly stated in the units called CFU. Per meal or per gram. Yeah. CFU is just the name of unit that people use to talk about microorganisms. Yeah. So the minimum number is 10 to the 6 or 1 million. So look for these 4 main criteria next time you buy a genuine probiotic containing product, let's say a cultured milk drink. So not all cultured milk drink or yogurt or fermented milk product contains live microorganisms or probiotics. Yeah. So I must move on quickly now. There are also probiotic supplements that come in the shape of powder or pill form. You know, we can also take these, yeah, if you choose to take that. But check for the dosage, check for the frequency, how often you must take this. Yeah. Again, look for the number of CFU, look for the strain name. Yeah. It's best you consult a nutritionist or a doctor before you take any of these supplements. Yeah. And well, we will encourage to take from a food source beverage such as a cultured milk drink. Yeah. So the key, what is the key message that to get optimal benefit of probiotics is to consume this regularly on a daily basis. not once in 5 years, regularly on a daily basis. Yeah, the live cultures do not stay in the body for a long time. They get expelled, and you need to replenish that good bacteria in the gut. Yeah, so you must take it regularly for a long time, and how long, that depends on the person, on the individuals, on the gut microbiota condition of the person. Yeah, there's no one rule that fits everybody. Yeah, so regular taking is very important. Yeah, so a lot of scientific evidence have shown that probiotic containing foods are safe. They can be part of a daily diet of a person, and it's generally safe for all age of a person, pregnant women, children, and so on. Yeah, but if you're unsure, you can consult your doctor. And even say for infants, some milk powder even contains probiotics added inside. Yeah, so there are very few side effects of consuming probiotic products. Yeah, and some people have experienced, for example, discomfort, flatulence, some minor discomfort, which could come from the probiotics, or it could come from other foods that a person eats. So it's important how, having said that, probiotics are very useful. I must also add that probiotics are not miracle cures or magic bullets. Take probiotics and you can be prevented from all kinds of diseases, no cancer, no heart disease, nothing. Probiotics are not like that. It's part of a healthy diet. And I go back to the emphasis on balance, moderation, and variety. Together, then probiotics can be eaten as one part of a daily diet to help a person achieve good gut health, and therefore overall health of a person. So this is my last slide. I have only 4 minutes left. So just some take-home messages. A healthy, balanced gut microbiota is important. As I started off talking about that, good gut health, then we'll then bring about good immune health. Good immune health then can bring about good overall health of a person, especially now we're talking about still talking about fighting coronavirus and COVID-19. Entahlah bila nak turunkan the 5,000 that we see every day, So we must protect ourselves, public health measure, but then again, we must have a good immune health, and dietary practices is the only way. There is no magic bullet. Overall dietary practices and imbalanced gut microbiota, when bacteria wins over the good bacteria, is called dysbiosis. We must avoid that kind of situation, and balanced diet rich in dietary fiber is one of the key ways. And take dietary fiber from the various vegetables and fruits, whole grains, and legumes and beans and nuts that I mentioned. Dietary fiber plus phytonutrients plus a lot of other vitamins and minerals in these very important food groups. And of course, we can also take probiotic containing foods from the various traditional foods, as well as from commercially available products such as counter-made drinks and yogurt. And when you buy this product, look for the label, look for the criteria that I mentioned. Must be live, and must contain the genus, species, and the strain, storage, and a number of bacteria must be mentioned. Not less than 10 to the power of 6 live cultures must be present. And probiotics are not miracle cures. They can be part of our daily diet and will be one of the ways to bring about balanced diet, to bring about overall immune health for us and overall well-being for Malaysians. Just a few more slides, Dr. Mahendran, just promoting whatever we have in our NSM website, Probiotic Education Program. So if you missed some of things I mentioned, go back to our Nutrition Society website, look for this Probiotic Education Program, and there much more information on these probiotics are there, booklets, materials, articles, that are even also posters and also social media, short messages that you can download and refresh yourself on the importance of probiotics and health, and especially good microbiota. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Dr. T. Dear audience, I'm sure you have listened to Dr. T's passion about the nutrition and how his wonderful story on the gut and the role of diet. It's not an easy task to put all these things, what happened in the gut and what you are eating, together with it and to understand it. I think Dr. T have put it in a very simple manner for all of us to understand. And he have given you from the brief here, from what local food are and how we can take care of your gut system and how the diet works in the gut system for betterment of our health, especially on immunity. He stressed on immunity and the current situation, definitely pandemic that we are facing. We are going to endemic now, but nevertheless, food is still important. I think Dr. T have put it very nicely to all of us. Thank you very much, Dr. T. It's a very wonderful and interesting topic, and you have given us in a very simple manner for us, all of us to understand. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, now with that knowledge, now we need to take a virtual flight to meet Professor Bruno Pott, the scientific director, for another interesting story on probiotic. Professor Bruno will explain to us the role of probiotics in clinical practice. I think Dr. T have mentioned about the basic thing, fundamental issue of the gut and everything. Now, and Prof. Bruno going to bring us to the probiotic in the clinical setting. The stress, the immunity, well, it's a very important topic with the current situation, as we all mentioned just now, pandemic, which is this COVID-19. Before I pass over the virtual screen to Prof. Bruno, let me give you all some background picture of Professor Bruno Pott. Professor Bruno Pott made a PhD in microbiology from University of Ghent, Belgium. In subsequent years, he went and did his postdoc on the very interesting topic on the research on lactic acid bacteria, LAB, very famous thing. Before the probiotic come, this is the main thing. This bacteria, good bacteria, bad bacteria, all we want to discuss, like what Dr. T mentioned. This is the postdoc thing that he had done. And in 1997, he joined the science department of Yakult as a science manager in Benelux. And in 2001, he became the research director at the Institute of Pasteur in France. During that time, he also a director of business development at the informatic company. You see how maths is working. Microbiologists, mathematics, very interesting. Definitely, you can't run away from that. Maths is very important. When you see the pipette, you must calculate. All these things are very important. And since 2001, Professor Bruno is a guest professor at the Universidade Bristol University for course in food and microbiology, food ecology, and food hygiene. Major topics that you see again there is LAB, lactic acid bacteria, bacteria-host interaction, probiotic with the special interest of mechanism of action. This is a very important topic. And the health claim for substitution, which is Dr. T was mentioning about it on the food regulation. And since 2016, Professor Bruno joined back the Yakult as a science director for Europe. Professor Bruno is also member of the taxonomy subcommittee of Lactobacillus, Bifidobacterium, and related taxa. This is all the bacteria, yeah? He knows the bacteria. He is the man of the bacteria to talk to all of us today. And he's the president of Biotic Research Institute in France and past board member of International Scientific Association of Probiotic and Prebiotic, and also the acting board member of ILSI Europe and the Lactic Acid Bacteria Industrial Platform. Professor Bruno is also an active member of scientific committees in International Probiotic Association in Europe, in the US, and co-chair a working group on dietary microbes within the Institute of Advancement and of Food and Nutrition Sciences. Definitely, Professor Bruno have all co-authored and authored more research publication, more than 250 and 25 chapters in the book. He writes theses, I guess. Professor Bruno, who else can talk about this probiotic now? Definitely Professor Bruno. This virtual platform is for you, Prof. Bruno.
Thank you so much, Professor Apokuti, for this very nice introduction. Really, it's flattering to hear all about that. But in the end, it's all about bacteria, so it's not that difficult. So let me share my screen. First of all, I also like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to present today. As was already mentioned, I've been in Malaysia before. It's about 2 years ago, and it's really a pity that I cannot repeat this in physical meeting this time. But I'm really happy to be addressing these few words and these few slides with you all related to probiotics. As I also like to thank Dr. T for the really nice introduction to the field, because probiotics cannot work without the microbiota, and I think Professor T, you did a really nice job in really presenting what the importance of the microbiota is, and I hope that with this presentation I can add something about the importance of probiotics in relation to that microbiota. So my talk will be really very short with an introduction on probiotics. I won't repeat the definition. Actually, I have a slide which shows the same definition as Professor T has just shown you. But then I would like to focus on the fact that probiotics seem to be able to do everything nowadays. There's so many papers on so many different applications of probiotics, and it really becomes difficult for people to understand what is it all about. And I hope that I can explain actually by stressing the fact that a lot of these activities go through the microbiota, so that people understand much better how important probiotics could be. And then, as announced, I will focus on a few applications that have been studied very well, not only for the Lactobacillus gazeae strain I will talk mainly about, for many other strains that have been used and which have been nicely also presented in the Malaysian legal context. And then just a few slides on mode of action, because this is definitely the future of our research. We need to much better understand how the probiotics interact with the microbiota and how to explain the cause and consequences of a probiotic intake to end up with some conclusions. So let me start by this short introduction. And you mentioned in your introduction the ISAB, the International Scientific Association of Pro and Prebiotics, and they've been very active over the last years in assembling experts from the field to produce these definitions. And I think I'm very proud to say that the probiotic definition is one of the oldest and validated definitions that we have in the field of functional foods. So it was developed already in 2002 by a committee of the FAO-WHO. This definition was confirmed actually in 2014 by a committee also composed by ISAB, and which was published in this paper from Professor Hill in 2014. And as stressed by Dr. T, there is 3 words that are important. We talk about live microorganisms, that is important. They should be administered in adequate amounts, and they should have a proven health benefit. What was also mentioned by Dr. T is the prebiotic definition, which is hopefully, like you mentioned, is the food for the good bacteria. So this is not live microorganisms. It's fibers, it's substrates that also have been shown by clinical studies to have a health benefit. It may be interesting, and this is also a definition that was recently redefined in 2020 by the same ISAB committee, is that if you combine pro and prebiotics, so you combine the bacteria and their food, we talk about symbiotics. So just one more slide on the history of probiotics. So as also mentioned by Professor T, in many fermented foods contain these live microorganisms, and they have been shown to have health benefits. Maybe the number is not sufficient to have them considered real probiotics. Maybe the clinical studies have not been performed for all of them. They have been important in maintaining diversity, for instance, of the microbiota. And the proven history goes back until like 9,000 years ago, where we know that people were already making beer and wine, which is fermented with live microorganisms, or also kefir and kumis. If we go to the scientifically documented history of probiotics, then we can go back to the 19th century with Louis Pasteur that actually discovered the lactic acid bacteria. So the majority of the probiotics that we know today still are lactic acid bacteria. It's bacteria that produce lactic acid. The genus Lactobacillus was described also in the 19th century. The genus Bifidobacteria, you heard these names from the presentation of Dr. T. But when the first mention of health effects linked to those bacteria, then we have to go back to 1908 with Dr. Mechnikov, who was working in France in Pasteur Institute, and who published this book, The Prolongation of Life, Optimistic Studies, in which he dedicated one chapter to the fact that his observation was that farmers in Bulgaria, they had a long expectancy of life because they consumed a huge amount every day of fermented milk products. And he made the link to the quality of the microbiota with this. And this was actually the basis, I think, of the first knowledge that fermented foods and probiotics are health beneficial. And this idea was taken up by a medical doctor in Japan, Dr. Shirota, who actually used that information to produce the first commercial product in the world, which was distributed first in the hospital in Japan, and later then got commercialized in the 50s in Japan, and later outside Japan in many countries in the world nowadays. The word probiotic was introduced later in 1953, where the probiotic, so in favor of life, was actually the basis of the formation of the word. And this has, of course, the science has evolved over the many years. And last year, for instance, we had more than 1,500 publications, scientific publications on probiotics. So these large number of publications led to the fact that for some people, it seems that probiotics can do it all. They have so many different application fields in health that some people will start to doubt whether this is still credible. And actually, to understand that, it's important to understand that we are not only discussing the effect of the probiotic strain itself on humans, but we are studying also the effect of the probiotic on the microbiota. And as you have been understanding from the previous talk, the role of the microbiota is really important in human health. So if you have a way to impact positively on the quality of the microbiota, you may indirectly affect a lot of health effects. And so in 2017, this image was published by Dr. Wang, saying that the human microbiota has all these different fields of potential health beneficial. And we talk about obesity, we talk about inflammatory bowel disease, IBD, liver disease, infectious diseases, diabetes. But over the years, I think we have added many new application fields in allergy, which was also mentioned. More recently, the gut-brain axis, which has shown that the gut is having a communication, direct communication, I will come back on this, with the brain, and could possibly have influences, for instance, in Alzheimer's disease, in Parkinson's disease, in stress disorder, neural disorders. So the field has been growing gradually over the years. But what I want to focus today is mainly on the gut axis, which was also the application that was discussed in the previous presentations. So the gut, or the gastrointestinal tract, is really the most populated, if we talk about bacteria, area of our body. The stomach, of course, which is very acid, will not contain a lot of bacteria. But as you go down the intestinal tract, you will reach in the large intestine, in the colon, very high numbers, more than 1 trillion of microorganisms, or CFU, as mentioned before, per ml. So a huge amount of bacteria, which are really important in the final stages of the digestion and the fermentation, for instance, of the dietary fibers. So while in the earlier days, people were more interested in who is in those different parts of the intestine, today there's much more going on about what are they doing there. We would like to much better understand what bacteria do, how they communicate to each other, how metabolites of one bacteria can nourish the metabolites, can nourish other bacteria. And so the total picture that we have today is that probiotics, they will have an impact on the microbiota, and indirectly in this way, they may have different types of effects. And it's not possible in these 45 minutes to go through all these effects, but I will try to focus on a few, and one of them is the immunological effect. But you should realize that bacteria, since we consume them in a sufficient dose, they will also directly interact with bacteria in the microbiota. So Professor T talked about this balance, which is very important. Well, if you put in high numbers every day of good bacteria, that will definitely also impact on the balance. So they will become in competition, direct competition, for nutrients and for places with the potential pathogens. There's also endocrinological effects, neurological effects that I already mentioned. Very important effects on the barrier. So the gut is separated from the inner body by only one cell layer, which is really necessary in order to allow the absorption of the nutrients, as was also explained. But at the same time, it's a very delicate barrier that needs to be defended. And as truthfully pointed out, 70 to 80% of the immune system is actually located in the gut in order to take care of that protection. Metabolic effects, physiological effects, I will come back on some of them. So this is a nice slide that goes back from 2008 already, but it's still very valid. And what you can see here is the many different parallel effects of potential probiotics in the gut. So the first one is the metabolic effect. So as also mentioned before, some probiotics can actually produce vitamins or short-chain fatty acids, which are beneficial molecules. And as I just mentioned, they can compete for nutrients and for pieces. So this is the metabolic effect. You can have microbiological effects. They compete for positions at the epithelium. They can produce growth factors, or they can produce bacteriocins, which is direct antagonistic molecules against pathogens, for instance. Barrier function I mentioned before, and then of course the immune effects. I will come back more in detail on this. And there's different ways that microorganisms can interact with the immune system, as I will show. Neurological effects, again, influencing the gut-brain axis. So we know now that around the gut there is an enteric nervous system, which is the second biggest brain, you could say, your second brain, which is in direct contact to the nervus vagus with the brain. And they communicate in both ways, in both directions, day and night, to give signals from the gut to the brain and vice versa. And of course, also effects can happen on the hormonal balances. So a little bit more about this immune system. So why do probiotics have such a special relationship with the immune system? This may seem a very complicated slide. I will try to explain it in a simple way. And actually, the concept is very simple. So we can anticipate that in the gut, we have two types of bacteria. We have the potential pathogens, the bad bacteria, as they have been called before. And these have the potential, many of them, actually disrupt the barrier and arrive in the body of the host. There they will be detected by the immune system, like dendritic cells or macrophages. And the basis of the signal that this is a potential pathogen, an inflammation reaction will be launched. This is a reaction that has the purpose to produce IgA, globulin, which actually is able to destroy the pathogens. And this process is called an inflammation process. So when a pathogen comes, you will raise the immune system a pro-inflammatory response. And a key cytokine in this, or a key marker for this, is IL-12. It can easily be measured in the lab, so you can test if bacteria have the potential to induce IL-12, so if they have a pro-inflammatory potential. So that is an inflammation that in the end will stop the pathogens and will actually cure the patient in a certain way. The other arm of the microbiota, however, could be the bacteria, the commensals. And of course, the commensals don't have the potential to disrupt the barrier. They still will be detected by the immune system, because Maria Rescigno, she described in the past the process in which dendritic cells can actually put out their dendrites in order to sample information from the gut. And this is done in a safe way. It's done 24 hours a day, so it's a permanent monitoring of the quality of the intestinal content. What is very particular, that if a commensal is actually found, not a pathogen, but a commensal, the immune reaction is completely different. It's the same cells that evoke it, but rather than IL-12, which is stopped, another cytokine will be induced, is IL-10. IL-10 has the potential to actually stop inflammation and also to induce tolerance. So it is a regulator in the immune system. So this balance is really important. We need challenges for the immune system to keep this immune system alert and fight pathogens, but at the same time, there must be a controlling factor that says, well, now it's enough, and now inflammation should stop, and it should go back to the normal situation. So both types of bacteria have an important role in this. But we should not focus only on the immune system. And as mentioned before, there has been, besides the protection to the immune system and the bacteria in production, also an impact of probiotics in absorption, digestion, and fermentation. And I will not spend more time on this because it was very clearly explained in the previous talk. So one of the things that is still being discussed on a scientific level, I would say, is what is now a healthy microbiota? And as pointed out by Professor T, the balance is really important. But there is an increasing knowledge that it's not only about the balance, it's also about diversity and also about resilience. So the resilience is the speed at which, or the capacity of the microbiota to actually resist changes. So absence of symptoms is maybe an indicator of a healthy microbiota, because all of us have a different composition of microbiota, and still we can all be healthy. So from the moment you develop symptoms, you can anticipate that maybe something has gone wrong with the balance, and that we all are at risk of a disturbance of that balance is very clear. So, for instance, 33% of the people in their lifetime might actually suffer from an infectious bowel disease, 15% from food intolerances like lactose intolerance. 10% might be victim of irritable bowel syndrome like IBS, 5% antibiotic-associated diarrhea, and so on. So all of us, sooner or later, might face some of these imbalances. And therefore, it's important, as also pointed out, that probiotics can help you in anticipating some of these issues, and therefore can help to or contribute to a beneficial effect in the quality of the microbiota. My first conclusion is probiotics have an enormous potential, not only because of their interaction with the host directly, but mainly because of their interaction with the microbiota. However, we do realize that the ecosystem, as mentioned out, has several hundreds of species. So the ecosystem is really complex and really difficult to understand. Everybody has his own fingerprint of microbiota. So a probiotic might react differently in my microbiota as it might in yours. So in order to substantiate a functionality of a probiotic strain, it therefore is really necessary to do a clinical study with sufficient number of people so that you can have the diversity represented, which is definitely out there, and study the impact of your microbiota on this. So for the microbiota food, these studies should be done in healthy people. I think it's very important that we realize that there might also be probiotic drugs on the market. But the difference between a probiotic food and a probiotic drug is really critical. A probiotic food is to be taken on a daily basis without prescription, can be consumed by anybody in the population, as mentioned, old and young people. But a probiotic drug is definitely designed to cure or prevent diseases. And that's why it is very important that the type of research that is supporting a probiotic drug is different from a probiotic food. What I will talk about today is exclusively about probiotic foods, of course. So let's talk about how we can do this clinical research, although we are not using diseased people, but still we need to show an effect. And actually, it's important to understand that if you study a probiotic food in a healthy population, what the legal requirements are is that you show a health benefit on people that are already healthy. And so I will explain a little bit how this is possible. And for the strain that I'm discussing today, the Lactobacillus casei, there's been different application fields where the research has focused on over the last 30, 40 years, actually. And the ones that I will discuss today is the immune effects, the antibiotic-associated diarrhea. I will show a few studies on constipation, and in the end, also something on stress. Let's start with the immune function. So what I mentioned is that to show an effect on a healthy population, you have a problem in a sense that why or how can you show that your strain or your probiotic is improving health of people that are already healthy? Well, the legal requirements are clear, but the regulator will also allow that you use not a perfectly healthy population, but a population which they call is at risk. So a population that because of several conditions may not have an optimal immune system, if we talk about the immune system, may not have an optimal metabolism when we talk about metabolism. So if we look to the immune system, these candidates for this type of study might be young children for which the immune system is not completely developed. It could be elderly for which we know that the immune system is degrading and is going down, is becoming less efficient. Or we could think about patients that take drugs, think about antibiotics, which is also a stress for the microbiota. So the probiotic is not there to disease the cause of the drug intake, but could be there to prevent consequences of the antibiotic intake, as I will discuss later. And also very importantly, and this is the study I like to present, sports people which are in heavy training programs. We know that because of their physical activities, the immune system will be less effective, and therefore there will be an effect on the immune efficacy. And therefore, if you would use probiotics, you could probably show, if you have the right strain, an effect on maintenance of a normal immune function. But this is the study that was done in the UK, exactly on this target group. So what was done is 84 athletes which were engaged in endurance-based physical activity were actually asked for their contribution. 58 of them completed the study. They took a strain LCS, and 26 of them took a placebo, which is the same product, taste, color, and packaging, but without the active compound probiotic strain. And they did that for a period of 16 weeks. So 84 were engaged, 58 only completed the study, which indicated that these people are traveling a lot, or they have all kinds of obligations, which made that not all of them could unfortunately finish the study, but still 58 was a good number. And so the results showed very clearly that there is an effect of the LCS as compared to the placebo in terms of the number of infections that they had, and also in the duration of the infection. The interesting question that was also answered in this study by Professor Gilson was that this was linked to an increase in the salivary IgA. The IgA is one of these active molecules that I showed, which are able to eliminate pathogens. And this is a molecule that, of course, is made in the blood and also in the saliva. And so it's very easy to measure without having a bad interference with the persons that delivered the sample. And so when this was analyzed, you could see that even after 8 weeks and also still after 16 weeks, the group that got the probiotic maintained high levels of IgA, while, as could be expected, in the people that are active, physically very active, the immune system will go down, and if you are not supported by probiotics, you will see that the IgA concentration is going down. So probiotics in this case will not increase the salivary IgA. They will actually help to maintain the normal levels that you need to fight infections. Second example is about constipation. So this was a German study performed at University of Gießen, also quite a while ago. And constipation is also being mentioned before by Dr. Professor T as one of the discomforts that could in many people, and also is linked to the quality of the microbiota. So what is important if we'll make a study of constipation is that there is different ways to look into constipation. You can talk about the symptoms that are there. You could actually look into the stool consistency, which is often linked hard stools to constipation. So both parameters preferably are measured. In this study, there were 70 people, again, in a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial, which is a high-quality study. 70 people, 35 of them taking the probiotic and 35 taking the placebo. And the probiotic was 1 bottle of Yakult taken for a period of 4 days every day, for 4 weeks every day. And of course, there were medical examinations that checked the status of the participants. What was shown here, that in the self-reported severity of constipation, there was a reduction of the symptoms as of week 2, definitely not in week 1, but as of week 2, which remained valid through the final period of administration of the probiotic. Also interesting, the consistency, the hardness of the stool went down significantly in the participants. What was shown actually, however, is that there was also a reduction in the placebo group on the consistency, as you can see. And this is a very normal effect because in IBS cases, the placebo effect is about 66%. That's a lot. What does it mean, a placebo effect? It means that people who get attention and a treatment, even if it is a treatment with sugar or a non-effective molecule, they will still feel improvement. And that is a psychological effect, which is very common in research. And this is why actually it's very important to do placebo-controlled studies in which you can compare the effect of the placebo versus the real effect of your strain. So it's very important in this type of studies that we also take that into consideration. So in order to maybe make measurements a little bit more stable, it is important to focus maybe on good measurable endpoints. Consistency is something which could easily be measured. So it can be measured what is called the Bristol stool scale. So it's a way to look into the hardness of the stool. So a very hard stool will have a very low score. So 1 and 2 are very hard stools. But if you go to a score 6, then you will have a very soft stool. It's almost like diarrhea. And what is interesting is that these differences in hardness has been shown to be linked to the quality of the microbiota in a paper from 2016 from a Belgian group around Jeroen Raas. And what they showed is that high density stools, very hard stools, actually have a higher diversity than the soft stools. And this intermediate situation is probably where the optimal situation is. So the scores 3, 4, and 5 are probably the scores with the better quality, the better type of diversity. And so what you can study in this case is to what extent your probiotic can influence the Bristol stool scale and so have an impact on the microbiota. And this study was actually designed to show that. It's a study that was done in elderly, age 74 to 90 years old, which in many cases suffer from constipation. The problem is that these elderly, they were frail elderly, so they had taken antibiotics frequently, they were sent to hospital. So only of this large group, only 44 consumed the LCS during the complete period. But still, it was enough to do statistically significant calculations. I should also mention that these people were assisted by the nursing staff to actually do the measurements. So it was trained staff that actually did the registrations. What we could see is that indeed the intake of the LCS strain did change in a positive way, both the hard and the soft stools. So there was a decrease in the number of hard stools. There was also a decrease in the number of soft stools. And there was, as a consequence, an increase in the ideal softness of the stools in the participants. So shows that it's not only an effect of constipation, but that it is a normalizing effect on the quality of the microbiota, which can be achieved with LCS. So another application is antibiotic-associated diarrhea. So as you all know, preferably we prefer to avoid the intake of antibiotics, but of course, sometimes it's inevitable. And then we know that this will have an impact, as was mentioned also in the talk of Professor T, on the gut bacteria. So in order to prevent really a disturbance of the balance, it is important that we consider every measure that is possible to prevent this. And so probiotics have been shown as one of the ways, and I will come back later on this more extensively, as a really effective way to prevent the disturbance of the balance. If you don't take a probiotic, then 25% of the cases you will develop a diarrhea, which is at the basis is Clostridium difficile. It's a pathogen that is present in about 3% of the people, but when it's normally controlled by the good bacteria. But if you disturb the balance, then C. difficile will pop up and will produce toxins, which can make you very, very sick. So this study was set up in the UK, in Stoke Mandeville Hospital, in a specific condition. So if you want to do this study, you need to be sure that you are looking into patients that are likely to receive antibiotics. So in this case, the choice was made to do a study with patients that are in the hospital at high risk of developing all kinds of infections. And these patients are patients with spinal cord injuries. So they are laying in bed most of the time, and they are very prone to infections. So in this first trial, which was not placebo-controlled, 164 patients were included. 76 of them received the LCS product, and 82 of them were included as controls. Again, the treatment was 1 bottle of Yakult a day, and the antibiotic was taken during the antibiotic treatment, as well as 7 days after the end of the antibiotic treatment, in order to make sure that the balance is maintained. What was shown in this non-placebo-controlled trial was that there was a significant reduction in the antibiotic-associated diarrhea from 17% in the treatment group versus 55% in the placebo. So that was a very interesting result. And Dr. Wong said, well, we need to do this in a placebo-controlled trial because, as I mentioned before, placebo effect in gut diseases is really very high. So very lucky because this study was published only like 1.5 months ago. So that study was performed again, same setting, spinal cord injury patients. This time 359 people were included. So it was a multi-center study in 3 different centers. 181 received the LCS strain, and 178 were controlled as placebo-controlled. Again, 1 bottle per day for 7 days after and during the antibiotic treatment. And in this case, and that's again why I think I want to stress the importance of the placebo effect, there was a slight difference in the treatment versus the placebo group. This difference was not significant, so it was 0.63, the first endpoint. However, what was very significant is the fact that patients that took other medication, like proton pump inhibitors, were actually successfully against antibiotic-associated diarrhea by the LCS intake. So this shows that it's quite difficult to do clinical studies in a food area with probiotic strains. So the first result was really very, very significant with 0.001, while this strain did not show significance when it was on a larger scale. So again, it's very important that you monitor also if you are deciding on a probiotic, what type of probiotic would you take and for what type of application. But in this case, so patients that had a PPI consumption were actually protected against antibiotic-associated diarrhea. And then the last example is the stress management. This is maybe interesting. I think that a lot of students are actually watching this video maybe. So that was a study that was done in Japan with students that were preparing for a medical exam at university. So they started to take the probiotic 8 weeks before the exam, and then a number of markers were monitored. So the abdominal dysfunction, so do they suffer from bloating, do they suffer from other symptoms, as well as psychological and physiological stress were measured. So at the same time, students were asked to actually deposit stool samples so that we could look into the composition of the microbiota. But also, they were asked to give blood so that we could look into the stress-responsive gene expression during that period. And the results were quite interesting, actually, because the scores on the abdominal dysfunction were significantly lower in the Alocasia ceruta strain versus the placebo. So again, it was a placebo-controlled trial, very significant. Also, looking into the white blood cells, there was a difference in the stress response genes that were actually found in the patients versus, or not in the patients, in the students that took the probiotic versus the ones that got the placebo. This was linked to a difference in the microbiota diversity, which was increased or which was maintained, I should say, it's not increased, which was maintained in the group that got the probiotic. And also very interesting, there was an effect measured on the cortisol in the saliva. Cortisol is a biochemical marker for stress. Cortisol is really the stress hormone, and you can easily find it in the salivary. And so if you take these samples again, from both the treatment and the placebo group, you can find significant differences, meaning that the stress feeling as well as the stress physiological markers have been reduced in those students that were preparing for the exam. So just a few slides more on the mode of action. So generally, I think I try to explain already that there is different ways that probiotics can influence health of the consumer. And what is very important in the message today is that it's rarely one particular function. So if you take a probiotic for your immune effect, it will physically be present in the intestine and it will have inherently microbiological effects. It will compete with the microbiota. It will be metabolically active, so it will produce some metabolites which could also impact on the health. So it's very difficult to separate one particular aspect and mode of action. Although in the lab, your research will focus on how do I find a strain which is immunologically active. But once you start to administer it to healthy people or to patients, in the case of drug development, you have a completely different situation. So that's why it's very important that you do this clinical research. So to focus a little bit on the mode of action of one particular activity, which is the immune function. There are two different ways that have been supported for probiotics in general and for LCS in particular. So I already mentioned briefly when we discussed the athlete study that there was an increase of the salivary IgA, so the antibodies actually destroy pathogens. At the same time, there's been lots of studies that show that natural killer cell activity is also important. And NK cells, it's a part of the immune system, but the function of NK cells is to detect cells within the body that don't function normally. So this could, for instance, be cancer cells, but this could also be cells that are infected by viruses. And NK cell activity is really an important fact in an important aspect of the immune system to fight viral infections, as has been discussed before. In this current pandemic situation, this is really an important effect. So this is a list of studies that have been performed in Japan and in Europe with LCS, and in which natural killer cell activity has been monitored. You can see that in many cases there is a positive effect, but at least in two studies, one in the Netherlands and one in Germany, we could not measure a significant increase of the natural killer cell activity. So again, doing clinical research with probiotics is definitely possible. It's giving proof of the effect of some strains. You're not always successful, and sometimes you have a different target population or you have a different setting, which does not allow you to confirm a particular result. So if we look to the mode of action and go to microbiological effects, I already mentioned that the diversity is really important. And so the example that I gave with antibiotic-associated diarrhea was a very nice example. It was not an exclusive example. Within the International Probiotic Association Europe, we actually composed a list which was intended for publication. It's still being prepared, so I can present you part of the results today, in which an inventory was made of all the studies that have, all the probiotic studies that have studied the effect of antibiotic administration. This is a very long list. It's like 4 or 5 slides. What is important is that in all of these studies, in adults as well as in children, resilience is put forward as an important mechanisms of action. So probiotics, when they are added to the microbiota, they actually increase the resistance of the microbiota to change. So even if you would take an antibiotic that might disrupt part of your microbiota, the fact that probiotics are there might fortify that resilience. And it's really amazing. There's only one study in the whole list in which resilience was not put forward as the main mechanism. So you can see here, again, 4 or 5 studies in which resilience is important. Another 3 or 4, and you have the children as well. Everywhere in all of these studies, resilience is put forward. So how that exactly works, we still don't understand. The complexity of the microbiota is really large. It's very important to realize that if you can show this with so many bacteria, it's definitely a mode of action that is worthwhile. And that leads me to a second conclusion here in this talk. Some of these activities of probiotics, as been described in the definition paper from Hill et al., some of these activities are widespread. So if we take this resilience aspect, many strains that actually will support resilience. But there's also, like for the immune effects, strains which are really specific for that property. So LCS and the interaction with, for instance, natural killer cell, you will not find it in all the cells. So the strain specificity that was also mentioned by Professor T is really important. There is, of course, activities as for many fermented foods, for instance, will have beneficial effects which are widespread and will be valid in terms of a specific diet. And the last example when we talk about mechanisms is the neurological function. This is really one of the areas where much more research is needed. We know that there is this direct link between the neurological system of the gut, the second brain, and it has been called, and the brain through the nervous vac. We know that there is molecules like GABA and like serotonin, which are produced in the gut, which may have actually an impact on mood, for instance, or on the way that you feel on a daily basis. There's also metabolic implications of melatonin and histamine that have linked to metabolites of the gut. And this is really a complicated system that has also links with endocrine pathways. pathways, with metabolic pathways, with immune pathways. So all of this is interlinked. And we are now counting on these new methodologies, the so-called omics technologies, which are gradually coming up, which will show us not only who is there in the gastrointestinal tract, but also what these bacteria are doing there. And these new methodologies are generating so much interesting information, which by artificial intelligence and other informatics way are now being gathered into databases and being analyzed, so that the hope is really there that in the coming years we'll have a much better understanding of all the pathways that underlie the beneficial effects of the microbiota, and then also analyze in that aspect what is the possible contribution of a specific probiotic in this whole complexity. My concluding slide is probiotic administration is linked to a multitude of health benefits. So we now know that this is not only due to the probiotic, but to the effect on the microbiota. We know that immune effect is one of the most important ones that people know also about, because 70 to 80% of the immune system is actually located in the gut. And that's why that can explain why probiotics are very effective in the gut. And we should not forget that there is shared mechanisms between many strains, but that for some strains you really require a particular strain. So resembling this graph that has been described in 2014. Since we are talking about food, and as was mentioned in the previous talk, diet and food is really a very advisable way, a safe way to maintain this regular intake of live microorganisms, to support your microbiota, to protect against the disbalance which all of us will suffer at some point in time. And with a positive message for the future, I think the multi-omic approaches that we are currently using in the lab will help us to much better understand the link between the food we ate, the microbiota we have, and the health aspects that we are facing. So with this message, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I'm of course open for any question you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof. Bruno. Very interesting, very wonderful presentation. You gave us the very in detail aspects of probiotic in clinical setting, which is also including the sports individuals. Yeah, Professor Mike Gilson, a very interesting guy from the Labrador University. He's retired now, but he's still writing books on the nutrition, and he still talks about probiotics as well. Actually, he was my examiner for my PhD, and he in fact, those many years ago, when Dr. T always talk about functional food, he put me, Mahendran, why don't you try probiotic? In your Asian country, people eat a lot of fermented food. See how the two giants works. Somehow or other, they don't meet each other, but they put the thoughts to me as well. So this is a very important platform, I would say that. And then this is where I think the scientists work. Dr. T, from many, many years, he talks about the functional food. In fact, that's where the interesting part of it. And I would say that many nutritionists in food scientists excited about it. And now, Prof. Bruno, you put it very nicely on the aspect of the clinical setting. How is it important? And how is it can workable? And many research is showing positive signal and everything. When I did my study on probiotic, I started with 4 legs, because the 4 legs listen to us more than the 2 legs. I'm sure you agree with me. And when we started,
they don't protest. They don't protest so easily.
When I put them in treadmill, they do run. These mice are very good. They listen to me somehow or other. But once sometimes they get relaxed, they put in one corner and they go on side and they try to avoid this training part. But that's the interesting part. And when we did that paper and published it, but it's a different type of strain, and we wanted to look how is it impact on the immune system. And then that's how you put it very nicely, the mechanism of actions and everything. And I think Professor Hills, when he put it in that conclusion remark, step by step, what we have done, studied, and what we have need to go further exploration. The pyramid kind of a slide that you have put earlier on, talking about the widespread among the probiotic study, the frequent species studied, and rare. And I think this is where people are looking at it. And those who are in this field, really looking at this area to explore further. I think it was a very interesting topic. You have given us the explanation for understanding from public aspect, from common issues like constipation, which Dr. T started with the topic on the fibers, and then you come and show how a probiotic helps inside the system, the combination of pre and probiotics as well, and lactobacillus casei shirotas, how is it works in a single strain. I think it's a very important point that we have a few questions lined up in the YouTube. I will try to pick up a few. What was the first one? It was starting to ask Dr. T. Seong. Dr. T, a probiotic product safe enough and must consume by a baby 13 months years old? If Prof. Bruno also can.
Yeah, I would just make a start first. Actually, I did share my last few slides that it is safe, and all ages and a lot of studies have indicated that they are safe, and very few side effects. I also mentioned that there are infant formulas now. I'm not promoting infant formulas, but if you do need infant formulas, then they try to make them close to the breast milk, and also there's added probiotics inside, and the regulations do allow, the food law does allow probiotics to be added, not just in Malaysia, but also elsewhere. So my answer will be short, will be safe, but whether you must take it or not, you can take from a variety of foods, you can take naturally occurring, bacteria, maybe Prof. Bruno can add from the more scientific.
The 13 years month, sorry.
Yeah, 13 months, yes. So I mentioned that, I did mention that even some infant formulas have, infant formulas are for children, infants below 12 months. So 13 months, of course, they're safe to be taken,
So no worries here.
Yeah, I do not think there's any worry. And as I mentioned, even infants below 12 months, they're added into the infant formulas,
In fact, some people starting with the weaning process as well, they start mixing up with the food as well to feed the babies.
Yes. They use traditionally fermented foods. I think Indian community use a lot of traditionally fermented foods, very impressed. And also, I think Indonesian also.
Right.
But having said that about adding probiotic, of course, in Malaysia, we strictly control the type of probiotic that may be added. There are only 32 strains allowed, and not any bacteria that anyone can find and put inside. It's very strictly controlled.
This is where I think public need to know. They really need to go and explore. Please go and explore. You get inside the probiotic education program organized by the Nutrition Society of Malaysia. Go and explore there. Get some scientific evidence base. Don't hearsay a lot. Please go and explore. Don't listen to Google Doctor so much as well.
There's some problems with that, yes.
Yes.
Don't just listen to Prof. Bruno and Dr. T. Go and study more the science. Yes.
No, but it's really true. There's so many literature, so much literature in the good literature. So to go to really scientific sites, to NCBI, where you have PubMed that is publishing only peer-reviewed journals, and there you will find really nice research reports, which are critical sometimes, but definitely supporting the use of probiotics on a wide scale.
Prof. mentioned about critical. Yes, we do hear critiques about probiotic products, probiotic drinks in the email, in the internet. We must check all those references. Where are those? What are those? Are they credible sources of literature or not? Or is it one study that someone published, and we look at the totality of evidence, not just based on one study and two study and say that probiotics can do this and that. So the totality of evidence is important, and not just believe one study and say that, probiotic taking can cause you foggy brain and things like that. There's no science for that.
In science, there's a positive answer, there will be a negative answer as well.
Yeah.
So as we see, we must see in a collective manner. Like what your Dr. T mentioned, it's very important to study and see how the methodology done, how is the findings is done, who is doing it, what is the background of it, and the study, how is it outcome, and which kind of journal also. Nowadays, there's a lot of fraudulent journals available as well. So people cite all kind of things, but we really need to look at it. I think that, as Dr. T mentioned from the beginning, education is important. Empower the public, empower the person. When you are to eat, you must know what you are eating. Where is it, the sources and everything. The science is important there. Yes, Prof. Bruno, you wanted to mention something?
Well, I agree with Dr. T that if we need, science has been made like this. So you have somebody publishing something and then there's somebody reacting to that. And that has made progress, science a lot. And so one of the examples I would like to give is about antibiotic-associated diarrhea. So there was a paper published like 1.5 years ago, which said that probiotics did not work in antibiotic-associated diarrhea, which was really a surprise to the scientific community because I showed there's so many examples of things working. And then it turned out, and that was actually then published by ISAP on the website, it turned out that the probiotic was given after the antibiotic administration. So when the harm is done. So that explained why for that particular probiotic, there was no effect. So, and that kind of things really need to be discussed in the literature. So if people find that article and they don't realize the importance of administering a probiotic together with the antibiotic, then it might explain, of course, why there was a negative result. So that kind of discussions is really important and it helps forward the knowledge.
Exactly, Prof. Bruno. Don't read the abstract per se only. Just read. You must see the whole entire publication. That's very important. You can read and critique and go line by line, understand it, and then value it. I think that's very important. In a fast world, yes, you can get some papers, but you go inside there. What is important? I think this is where I think our plus point here in this webinar. We also educate. Please go and look for the reputable journals, reputable website, reputable industry products are listed in the government Ministry of Health. Look at it and study about it. It's not easy. Let's move on to the next question. That's an interesting question. Dr. T, how do we assess on our gut in general? Is there a test that can be done or observation can be made regularly to monitor and ensure our gut system is in the healthy category? This is a gastroenterologist question.
Oh, I'm not a gastroenterologist, and I'm not a medical doctor, but that's a very good question. And I suppose I observe our bowel habits.
Yeah.
Actually, Prof. Manuel, our body tells us a lot of things. Sometimes we just refuse to listen. We send our car for maintenance very religiously. We love our car like our whatever. But then our body, we don't bother. We only do something when we have a chest pain or ants running to the toilet or, our blood pressure going up. We must do regular checking and go to see a doctor for regular checking. Our body tells us a lot of things. Your bowel movement, your bloatiness,
Yes.
they tell you a lot of things. Listen to your body. That tells a lot of things. But talking seriously about colon cancer, for example, I work with some gastroenterologists on another society called Digestive Health Malaysia. And Dr. Razi talk about checking of colon cancer, checking for many cancers, checking for blood pressure, cholesterol. Who does that religiously? Raise your hand, although I can't see that. But then do that. Colon cancer check is the number one cause of cancer in men and second one in women. So do that. Colon cancer checks, very important. Then other things. Maybe Prof. Bruno can also add in some checks that one can look for. Yeah. Some tips that a person can observe.
Yes, Prof.
Well, maybe I can
Yeah.
add an optimistic message to that.
Yeah.
So today, as I mentioned in my talk, everybody has our own fingerprint of microbiota, so it's very diverse. So right now, nobody understands, even if you would measure the exact composition of your stool, not only in the stool, but maybe also in the intestine, which probably is a different composition. Even if you would be able to measure that, we still don't understand the complexity of that. So what is the truth is that different types of bacteria make a healthy microbiota. So today we don't have a definition of what is a healthy microbiota. So even if you would do the analysis of the microbiota on a regular basis, what would be interesting is to see how stable you are. That would be important. And then you can identify when there is a disturbance that, okay, this is linked to how I feel. I feel bad, or I have developed diarrhea, or I have headaches, and maybe you can make that link. But with the omics technologies that we have today, probably we are better and better understanding these interactions. And I'm very hopeful that in the future, we'll be able to actually take these samples of the stools or from the intestine and actually predict about possible health risks that you may have. So this is definitely coming up for the future.
I think technology is improving. So our healthcare also improving, the management of ourselves. I think what the Dr. T mentioned and Prof. Bruno mentioned, audience, you have to listen and you have to take care. You must see what is happening to your body system. If you, nobody else, doctor will ask you when you see them, apa sakit? What is your problem? When doctor can't see you through and then give you, oh, you are having all these A, B, C, D, Z. No, it is all depends on your symptom or your sign. That's where it's important. As all the, what they call the eminent scientists mentioned, it is basically individualization, precision based on your own self. You look for yourself, and then you know how to get advice. Like what Dr. T said, oncologists or the gastroenterologists. Oncologists deal with the cancer patients. Gastroenterologists, they deal with the gut systems and everything. You may have to visit them once in a while. Don't wait until you have a pain, then when you go. You must make a regular checkup with them. Get advice from medical doctors. They will do a scope or something to get your information. And before that, follow what Dr. T said from the beginning. BMV, yeah? Not BMW. He talked about car. I know Dr. T loves car. But BMV, balance, moderate, and variety. That is the key point. When you apply that part of it, and together with your probiotic that you are taking, you are adding. And Prof. Bruno put it in his conclusion. Put the diet, put the probiotic in your diet practice. As in the food, not as in a drug basis. Don't think as a drug. Think in the food first. Food is always, in sports, we always tell the athletes, food comes first. Supplement is a secondary. You must go back to the food. That is where the sport dietitian or sport nutritionist, that's what we emphasize. We have to educate them. It's the same goes to athletes. I think Prof. Bruno mentioned about it, how Prof. Mike Gilson put it in URTI, upper tract infection, on the salivary immunoglobulin, because that is the first defense on your mouth side. IgA will protect you. But when you get sore throat, can you perform well? No, sorry. Your performance may get impaired a little bit. But if you're taking the probiotic, it will help you. It is just an enhancement there. Now they are really going inside the immunity part, the mechanism and action, and really going to the genetic part already. In sport genomics, they are looking at probiotics per se as well. I think there's room for exploration. More things. So audience, listen to these two eminent professors by their own ways. Dr. T from Nasi Lemak, he talks about your kway teow and everything, but he still emphasizes, check your balance in your diet base. Prof. Bruno also talking about the same concept, that the clinical setting, the how you're looking at it, neurological, immunological, plenty of their area that is scientific has proven probiotic is helpful. But there is more work being to do done and more work to educate the public as well. We got a few, one more question to go. How rigorously has prebiotic been researched scientifically in terms of its role increasing the probiotic viability and availability as well as a mechanism in micronutrition? Prof. Bruno, this is for you.
Oh, that's a difficult question with many answers.
I tried.
So first of all, how has it been studied? I think it's been studied quite well. So in Europe, some of the health claims that have been approved are actually for prebiotics. So it means the science that supports the prebiotics is really there. So I think equally as we have seen an increase in the number of publications for probiotics, the same holds for the number of prebiotic publications. So the research is definitely there. How does it support the microbiota and the probiotics? That is a more difficult question because the fibers that are being administered, they are fermented in the colon. And as I said, the colon is really the place where we have the highest. I'm sorry, there's a fire alarm here, but it's an exercise.
Oh, God.
Oh, no.
What a time.
Is it a false alarm or?
No,
It's an exercise, probably.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I'm really, really sorry about this.
okay.
So I hope you can still understand me.
Right.
Is it okay?
Yes, Prof. We
Yes.
understand that. That's a duty call.
This is
Yeah.
really crazy.
Yeah, I understand.
So the fact is that the prebiotics, they will be fermented in the colon, which has a very high concentration of bacteria. And that, as a result, is very difficult to predict which ones will actually take the fiber and digest it. But what we know is that they are degraded into short-chain fatty acids. And short-chain fatty acids is really the compound that is being useful in promoting the energy for the colonocytes, in stimulating the immune system like butyrate. And so we know that the probiotics, they also arrive in the colon and they will contribute to that positive effect. So even if we don't know exactly which probiotic is being supported by the fiber, we know that the health benefits are definitely there. And so the prediction is also that in the future, you will see symbiotic products on the market, which actually have a probiotic together with a symbiotic. And it has been shown in the lab that they support each other. So you will increase the chances that your fiber will support a specific probiotic. And these are being studies which are currently being done for sure.
Okay. I understand,
I
Prof.
can chip in a bit also about the prebiotic. The Malaysian food regulation also allow claims on prebiotics, and working with them for over 15 years, there has been a number of applications for use of the term prebiotics and recognize the health effects like production of short-chain fatty acid, like what Bruno said, and some have been recognized. It's inside the food regulations and the permitted health claims, and some of them are prebiotics. For example, inulin is recognized, fructooligosaccharides, galactooligosaccharides, and mixtures of some of these have been recognized. That's a definition also, like Prof. Bruno has already highlighted. ISEP also has endorsed that definition. Yeah.
So, Prof. Bruno, you really need to move. Is it okay? Your fire alarm is. I'm worried, Prof.
I'm okay, but the alarm is still going.
All right. My goodness.
We don't hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't hear anything. We can't hear. I'm sure it's loud there for you.
Okay.
If you have to leave, please, Prof. Bruno, we understand.
No. It's an exercise. So
Okay.
they've been checking the alarm system all morning already, but I didn't know they were going to do that.
Oh, no wonder you were
Don't
just
worry,
chatting.
don't worry.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talking about the probiotic per se, there was some questions asking about. I take yogurt. Is that enough for me to get a probiotic? Dr. T, how you think in that?
I that's a very important question. I also look at the yogurt label in the supermarket at the cold area. I don't see many of them having label as probiotic. And maybe they do not have enough number, they are not live, so they dare not label as probiotic. So what we can say is check the label, and if they have enough number and they are live, then big companies will not dare to simply label, something when they do not have live microorganisms and the number does not meet what's required by the law. So do check the label. And I must say that when those labels that I check, they are not labeled as probiotics. They do contain bacteria, good bacteria, beneficial bacteria, but not enough maybe to call them probiotics. Not the one in Malaysia. In Europe, I think they have.
Well, it's true that there's the only health claim in that area that has been approved by EFSA is on lactose intolerance for yogurt bacteria. So the fact that yogurt produces lactase, which is the enzyme that degrades lactose, is the milk sugar that makes some people develop diarrhea. The fact that yogurt is making that enzyme has been recognized as a health benefit by the European Food Safety Authority.
Okay.
That's good. Because like what Dr. T mentioned, the homemade tairu or yogurt may not have that sufficient viability of the live microorganism. But in Indian practice, it is a common practice that you must eat daily. It's like a meal that you must have it daily, but not many are practicing it. But back in India and Tamil Nadu, especially in southern India, it is a must. It's like a 3-course meal. You must have one part of it is yogurt with the rice. Mixture of rice and yogurt and a pinch of salt and also onion together with it. Raw onion, you know.
Which is your prebiotic.
Yes.
So I really don't know. This is the old people. Our folks have studied very well. They
we can learn so much.
We have to learn from them many things.
Yes.
I always feel that Asian food diets are very healthy. If practice it properly, it's a healthy diet. Currently, is more on fried food base. Is very much on oil and everything, like what Dr. T was talking about, chao kway teow or fried noodles and everything. Or Prof. Bruno, when you come down, we have to serve you all these things.
Chao kway teow.
You have to.
I'm all in for that. I'm all in for that, for sure.
I'm sure Maslin and Hamada-san will bring you for that kind of food.
No more fly in, fly out.
Yeah, no jumping, and then you have to rush back. I remember you were like a touch and go. Definitely was a touch and go presentation, but it's a very important part. I think that was a milestone that we have started during the Nutrition Society Malaysia. Now, when we work with the faculties, universities, because in probiotic in sports, I think you have mentioned a few papers on that, and I believe there is more room for sports people are looking at it. So, Prof. Bruno, is there any in Europe, a part of Prof. Michael's paper? Is there any papers are coming up in the athlete per se? Or in your review paper that you are mentioning about it, do you have any papers on probiotics and athlete groups?
Really sorry, was this question for me? Because there was a time that I couldn't hear the question.
Oh, sorry, Prof. What I was mentioning is, is there any papers or any studies on looking at the probiotic and sports or athletes in Europe studies? I remember Prof. Mike Gilson have done it many years ago, a part of that papers.
Yes, there was a recently study published. Actually, on 24th of November, we have a webinar in Europe on presenting this on sports nutrition. And so Professor Gilson is going to do the introduction. But the main part of the study is a study which was done in Brazil with marathon runners. And so it was also a well structured study in which marathon runners were administered the probiotic or the placebo. And actually, they show a significant difference between the ones that got the placebo and the Yakult product, in the sense that there were less fatigue symptoms. And so there's a number of criteria. But I won't spoil here the results. So I invite you all to register for the talk. Yeah. And I think Madeline has already diffused the possibility, because it's also available for people in Malaysia. They can register for the webinar and hear all about that study. But to make a long story short, indeed, there is many studies that not only with Yakult that have shown that the quality of the microbiota can be influenced positively by probiotics, and that will benefit the performance and the immune performance mainly of athletes, which is because of the physical
Oops.
Okay, what happened?
Oh,
The fire alarm is.
no, I think, my goodness.
But I think what Prof. Bruno was mentioning, there is a talk is coming up on
Yeah,
the
November.
probiotic and sports. I believe we will try to share to all audience if you are available for that. And it's indeed
Again,
you're
Prof
here
is back.
now.
With
You can continue, Prof. I'm sure it's noise.
No, when I got out.
You mentioned about the conference, and then also the upcoming conference, and also the you want to give the gist of it only.
other studies.
So,
He's not supposed to give the gist.
no, but the fact is that there is many other strains that actually have been shown to increase the immune potential in patients, that not in patients, but in people that will suffer from a reduced immune function because of the physical exercise that they are doing. And I think that is an important message for people that are in the situation where they expect their immune system to go down, that they can anticipate this by considering probiotics.
Right.
If I may ask Prof. Bruno, talking about probiotics and athletes, and these are marathon runners, athletes, serious strenuous exercise. What about everyday people who exercise? Are there any proven health benefits like better stamina, or more respiratory function for just ordinary people like me who want to do continuous exercise? Would there be some beneficial effects? Are there some studies to show that?
Well, there are, because the fact, for instance, to support the natural killer cell, which I have presented, in many cases, these studies were done in elderly people in which the immune system is traditionally going down. And so this is normally healthy people, but which, because of the age, we know that it's in all of us, the immune system will actually be less efficient. And this is why you can show that by a probiotic, you can actually maintain the NK cell activity in many of those cases. So not only linked to sports activity, but to other activities that will have an effect on the efficacy of the immune system. Probiotics may have a supportive effect.
Okay. Yeah.
I've got a few more questions before we end up. Prof. Bruno, there was a question on my mother have a diabetic, and as a nutritionist, I like to advise them to take probiotic, but they said due to the sugar, is it okay to take or not, because the probiotic contains sugar? But this Prof. Bruno is out.
I'm still there.
Yeah, okay.
I hope so. I hope so. So the question about the sugar, it's a very normal question.
Yeah.
So we know that there's sugar in the product. I don't know about the situation in Malaysia, but in Europe we have a Yakult Light, which contains less sugar. I don't know if the Yakult Light is available in Malaysia or not. So that is definitely one solution. The other thing is that because the volume of the product is not very high, the total amount of sugar is really feasible. It is something that even with people with diabetic, they could actually be part of a daily diet. They should know the amount of sugar that is in there and take that into account in the calculations of their daily intake. So this is the only explanation we can give. The sugar is important for the taste, but part of the sugar is also important for the viability of the strains. Not all of it, but part of the sugar is important for the viability of the strains during the shelf life, which is 1 month.
I think that question also was asked to me when I was doing a workshop, online workshop, understanding probiotics and culture milk drinks, and also because culture milk drink contains sugar, can I take it? So that was the question asked. Yeah. So even diabetic patients need some sugar. You cannot totally deal with it, but how much sugar? And actually, there's no real worry about the sugar, as Prof. Bruno said. And sugar is needed by the bacteria, some of the strains, and for the purpose of the lactic acid production there. I think overall, I would like to tell the participant in that workshop also that it's not just because the product has got sugar, I don't take it. It's overly sensitive about sugar, overly emotional about sugar. I find that the topic of sugar is getting emotional rather than scientific about it. So just because something got sugar, I don't take it, I cannot take it. So I think we must be rational. Look at the overall picture of a product, look at the overall content. If it's a drink containing only sugar and nothing else, I do not want to take it. What's the for? If a product contains sugar but has got other benefits, other vitamins, has got, for example, probiotics, then it makes a totally difference. The product, I think, look at it, the overall picture, and then not get overly emotional about sugar. And does sugar cause diabetes? I think we have to really answer that question. Sugar does not cause diabetes. It's not just sugar causing diabetes. It's many other things like overconsumption of calorie, the weight problem, all these then may bring about insulin resistance and may bring about this type 2 diabetes. So we better understand the whole issue about diabetes and not just say diabetes is caused by taking too much sugar. Sugar bring about extra calorie are needed. Yes, but there are many other things like calorie also bring about extra calorie are needed. So all this must be taken in a total picture rather than just blaming on sugar. Yeah. So I think for the diabetic person, of course, more caution, but then again, take it into how much sugar is totally taken, and then it can be balanced out.
I think
No, I agree with Dr. T. I think people are emotional about sugar more and more because of messages on social media often also. But we should realize that our muscles, our brain, everything works on sugar. We do need sugar. So you cannot eliminate it from the diet. So we need carbohydrates to keep functional. So everything we do is driven by sugar. And so, of course, if you take too much of it, that's not good. We all know about this, but we should not eliminate sugar from our diet. This is not healthy.
I think that's where the BMW is coming. BMW. The problem is the hidden sugar. It's the hidden sugar and extra sugar that we are taking.
Yeah.
So if you know the food, that's what Dr. T was telling, read the label.
Yeah.
Read the label. It's all
exactly.
listed there. And Ministry of Health of Malaysia, very strict on that. Yeah, you must see what is your contents of sugar, carbohydrate. Well, they must be listed there. Sugar is listed there. So health claims is another issue, but nutrient labeling is another issue. People must understand that part of it properly. Understand. If you don't understand, look for a nutritionist to get advice on that. Look for that. There's plenty, many of them are there. Please go and look for them and get proper advice from proper people. As I said, don't go for Dr. Google per se everything. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So we have a very short time, but I got a two question, Dr. T. One is the daily intake of extra 30 ml healthy oil on top of diet. Will that control lower the cholesterol? This is out of topic a little bit on probiotic, but it's in general perspective, Dr. T.
30 minutes, I don't know why he's drinking oil, but I don't suppose he's drinking oil. It's difficult to answer. What about other oils that he's taking? We need to understand what other foods he's taking, how much oil is in the other foods. So speak to a nutritionist. I will also, same as Prof. Mahendran said, speak to a nutritionist. He will ask you, what did you have for breakfast, for lunch, for snack, and then advise you totally how much fat and oil are you taking already? Are you taking too much with this 30 gram or 30 ml of oil? Yeah. So speak to a nutritionist, really can advise a lot of other things in addition to just the oil and fat. We also need oil. We need energy. We cannot totally live without oil. Oil is a very important nutrient. It gives us the energy that we need to fight everybody. We fight everybody all the time. We need energy to live, to think, to talk like now. We need energy, we need oil because they carry the fat-soluble vitamins. Oil is needed. Everything is needed in the correct amount. Don't get emotional about oil and sugar.
This is a hot topic, oil and fat, sugar.
Okay.
Prof. Bruno, the last question here, I put it in the chat as well. Does antibiotic interfere with the viability of the probiotic from food?
That's a good question. That it depends on, of course, the antibiotic. If you have the clindamycin, so the broad spectrum antibiotics, it's very likely that it will also affect the probiotic. So that's why in general, your medical doctor, he will tell you not to take the probiotic and the antibiotic at the same time of the day. Of course, you need to take it during the administration of the antibiotic during the total period, but to respect like 2 or 3 hours difference between the intake of the antibiotic and the probiotic so that you avoid the really direct contact with them. So the antibiotic will be absorbed in the host when it passes through the small intestine. And so by the time the probiotic arrives, you already have the right concentrations to fight the pathogens in the body, but it will the effect, the direct effect with the probiotic will be less. That's the way to scientifically approach the question. But the answer is yes, your antibiotic may interfere with your probiotic.
Somehow or other, it's help complement each other. When you
Exactly.
the antibiotic moved on in the gut system and moved to the body, and another protection is coming by the probiotic, by the food itself. So it do help each other. So
Yes.
with that, I think we have, that's all the time today. I think we can talk many topics around is there. Thank you so much, and dear audience, this is not the end. We have 2 more sessions going to go on, especially on sports and especially on the immunity as well. So do log on with us, and I will pass over to the session to MC for the day, Raziv. And thank you to all the speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you again to both of our speakers and moderators for that very informative, productive, and lively session. So I would like to urge everyone, don't forget to take your daily dose of probiotics and not just caffeine. And remember, a healthy microbiota leads to healthy Viva la Vida. Anyway, don't forget to that this is a serial webinar in which we will have more sessions in the future, such as probiotic and sports in March 2022 and probiotics and immunity in August 2022. So be sure to mark your calendar and save the date. Again, on behalf of Faculty of Sports Science and Recreation UITM, I would like to thank all at Yakult Malaysia for making this webinar possible. Also, a million thanks to our speaker, Dr. T and Prof. Bruno for that very informative input. And I would like to also to thank our our participants, and hopefully this webinar has been an eye-opener which could aid you irrespective of your fields. Ultimately, this would be not possible without the organizer, and again, a million thanks to them. And with that, it brings us to the end of our sessions. So everyone, till next time, don't forget to subscribe this FSR UITM TV channel on YouTube, and please stay safe as usual. Signing off, I'm Radhi Sazali. Bye-bye.